Welcome to The Hill's Coronavirus Report. I'm Steve Clemons, editor-at-large of The Hill. Each day, we are interviewing consequential leaders and innovators in the battle against the coronavirus. This virus continues to hit home with all of us, even those making the big decisions about how to combat it. But the battle is complex because this virus goes after society's underlying conditions as well as a person's. Vulnerable communities, often communities of color, but also the homeless, the elderly, and others, have been hit hard by COVID-19. Fighting this virus and its impact means addressing these underlying inequalities in our society. Polls show that mayors and governors are the ones American citizens look up to for help and leadership in these stressful times. They're part of the front line of those addressing the virus, along with the medical health support staff and volunteers taking huge risks to save us. We've spoken to Mayor Michelle de la Isla of Topeka, Mayor Quentin Lucas of Kansas City, Mayor Jenny Durkin of Seattle, Mayor Francis Suarez of Miami, who himself tested positive for COVID-19, like Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms revealed about herself yesterday. They've all been on the front lines in their own way during this time. But the mayor of Washington, D.C. has been in the national spotlight for months as she is simultaneously overseeing the city's COVID-19 restrictions on distancing and balanced reopening, but also managing the outcry in the nation's capital that we saw all over the country and all over the world about George Floyd's murder. She had her public works department create Black Lives Matter Plaza just half a block from here. Huge yellow painted letters spelling out Black Lives Matter, honoring the movement in front of the White House and the place where peaceful protesters were gassed and assaulted by federal troops and officers. All of the storms are in Washington at the same time, and Mayor Muriel Bowser says she's working to not let this crisis define these times, but rather to take this opportunity to right many of the things that have been wrong. And along those lines, she's also been fighting for statehood for Washington, D.C. Joining me now to talk about her plans for the city is Mayor Bowser, mayor of the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Mayor, thanks so much for joining us. I've been watching what you've been doing, and there have been so many storms hitting not only the nation, but this city at the same time. How do you keep your balance? What's your North Star right now?
Well, our North Star continues to be to manage the district through these crises, to be able to invest in and uphold our values, Steve. So these crises don't change our core values, but actually help us focus on them and come out on the other side of this pandemic in a better place.
You and I have talked about Washington's challenges before: education, homeless issues, inequality, people that have been, systemic racism and whatnot. And I know that all of these issues continue to be a problem. But homelessness and affordable housing and changing that equation has been important. Tell us what you've been able to do while this crisis was going on.
Well, we are a city that is booming, attracting residents and businesses. And pre-pandemic, I think our number one issue was how to make DC more affordable for more people. When you have people that want to live in your town and start businesses in your town, one of the biggest problems that you'll have is housing prices going through the roof. And that's what we have been experiencing in DC for the past 15 years. So we have attacked it and we put DC taxpayer money behind it. And we're going to continue to do that. But I think what you see now, not just in DC, but in jurisdictions all over the country, that forcing your economy into a shutdown, putting it into a coma to deal with a health pandemic, has created for us $1.2 billion in revenue losses for this year and next year. So we've had to balance the budget in that way. So all of the really the things that we would have been able to do pre-pandemic to make our investments in housing even more robust, we're being more creative about how to get the same things done.
You basically have to run a city that cohabits with the federal government. Is the federal government right now, when you talk about collapsing revenues, and I know that they've tried to move some money out to states and localities, but is the federal government been friend or foe during these times?
It's been both. And I think that you can see that a lot of the professionals who are working in the agencies, even some of the cabinet members in the agencies have been doing their job. But, they are part of a political organization. And I think that some of the political decisions that have been made have been very dangerous for our nation and certainly for us. Just to give you a good example, we worked hand in hand with the Army Corps of Engineers and FEMA to set up an alternative care facility in record time. We're a notable and very big example of the federal government not being a partner with us, and we still don't know the genesis of this, but we were shorted in state level funding, which we always get, in the Federal CARES Act, to the tune of $750 million. So we will continue to work very hard at the Congress and the administration to have that $750 million replaced.
That's a significant amount of money, and that was new to me. So what's the strategy there? I mean, I assume the House of Representatives is with you, but do you have allies in the Senate?
It is in the HEROES bill that the Speaker of the House and Leader Hoyer and our Congresswoman worked very hard to make sure that CARES 1 was corrected and this business of referring to us as a territory was corrected moving forward. We continue to talk with our allies in the Senate. We had a meeting, actually a hearing on statehood, and we've had many conversations with the Senate to make sure it's corrected.
Mayor, you know the night that I'm talking about when we were in front of Lafayette Square. I was out there about half an hour before the action took off, walking in front of the church and the Hay Adams Hotel, and in front of talking to the protesters who were there, who in my anecdote, in my impression, were peaceful. I saw nothing there, and I saw scores of all different kinds and stripes of security police, some badged and branded and others not. 30 minutes later, there was a collision. You saw the gassing, you saw the president walk out. Can you take us into that and tell us what happened and how you managed the DC police side of that when you so clearly had an action against peaceful protesters in your city who were citizens of this city?
Well, I think I know what happened based on what I saw and what has been reported. And I think that there's certainly probably more that will be revealed. But it appears to me that on the command of the Attorney General of the United States, protesters were cleared in front of Lafayette Square by police officers or other federal officers that were under the command of the Attorney General of the United States, so that the president could walk across the street to the church to take a picture.
But citizens, people here were assaulted.
I think that our nation was assaulted. We believe in peaceful protest in our country. It's protected by our Constitution. And more than that, we believe in the autonomy of local jurisdictions. More than that, we believe that police officers should be identified. We don't believe that the United States military should be used in local policing matters. So there was not just the people there, certainly we were concerned about, but we think the rule of law and the tenets of our democracy were assaulted that day. Speaking very parochially, from our point of view, we saw federal officers advance in the streets of Washington, D.C. This could not have happened legally in any state in America. And the only reason that this is encroachment on our streets and our autonomy and our people was able to happen is because we lack statehood. And that is one reason I think so many people have been awoken to the unfairness and the problem of our democracy, in that 700,000 people in the nation's capital, the only residents of the capital city in the free world, who are not represented in their legislature. And it has to change.
So what is the strategy for that? We secured, or I should say we, because I'm a citizen here and I'm out there support statehood for Washington, D.C. But what is the next step to try to move that forward, to look at how you get a legitimate place as a state in the legislative branch and representation?
we should look back at how far we've come. Statehood and fighting for statehood is not a new movement, but certainly in the last 5 years, I think we've made tremendous progress. In 2016, we had a new strategy that we advanced that focused on a two plan. What I think a lot of people don't recognize, people forget their history, but there were 13 colonies, and then every other state that has been admitted to the Union has been admitted by a simple vote of the Congress of the United States. So you become a state by the Congress voting for you to become. People also misunderstand part of the constitutional requirements for a federal district. There is a maximum size that's required for the nation's capital. In our bill that's in the Congress now, outlines a federal district. So there will still be a nation's capital with all the federal buildings, the Washington Mall and Monument, and the seat of the federal government. But the balance of the current day District of Columbia will become the 51st state, Washington, Douglas Commonwealth. And what we know is that we have also secured more sponsors in the House, more sponsors in the Senate than ever before. And we've also secured the support of our delegations, the Democrats in Maryland and Virginia, who had previously not supported statehood for D.C., but now support statehood for D.C., including two very prominent, a son and daughter of Maryland, and that would be the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and the Majority Leader, Steny Hoyer. So it's very important, and we've never had any of those things. And the last thing that we've never had is a vote, 232 supporters in the House for statehood for Washington, D.C. And so all of us who know how a bill becomes a law knows that the law goes to the Senate. The president, I think, made a bold statement in which he hasn't done on a lot of things that are important, coming out against the bill, saying he would veto it. The leader, McConnell, said he wouldn't even bring it up for a vote. So we know that we have to change the Senate and change the White House. And we will be ready with a new constitution, a vote in the House. Our parameters for the new state already laid out, and we're ready to be admitted to the Union.
Well, I'm already on record saying that, I hope that happens. So I wish you well in that. Let me just say in the last couple of minutes, Mayor, on the broad question of how you prevent Washington, D.C. from following what's happening in Florida today, where you see massive returns and a resurgence of the COVID virus. You can only control so much, but this population here right now, you've achieved a lot. The numbers are not horrible. We've been seeing certain reopening, but I'm just interested in how you get the equities right when you see the politicization of masks. You see some people going along, you see a lot not. What do you need to make DC continue to be a success story and not follow in the track of those people that are being hit by the second wave of the first hit of this virus?
Well, let me first just say how proud I am of DC residents and businesses who have heeded the warnings of our health professionals and have followed our guidance. I'm always kind of shocked, in fact, how well people are adjusting their lives and their businesses at great personal cost. People have lost their jobs, businesses have shuttered, but people recognize and believe the science, and that we have to do all that we can collectively together to get on the other side of this and get back to normal as soon as possible. One of the big pieces of evidence that we have lately that people are listening, we love the 4th of July in Washington, D.C. We love to celebrate the country's birth. We have a big national display, but all of that is hard to do in the middle of a pandemic. I ask DC residents to stay at home on the 4th of July. And that's not something that I would do lightly, because I know it's a great time of family celebration. I was concerned about the celebration on the National Mall, but I was also concerned about people going to backyard picnics where we know the virus spread. And what we saw on the 4th of July is about when we looked at the ridership of our DC Metro. We saw about 10% of the people using the Metro to come down to the mall than we had seen the previous year. So that told me that people are going to continue to do individually what it takes to keep our community collectively healthier. But we all have to be concerned because there is no cure and there is no vaccine. And until we have both of those things, or at least one of those things, I think getting our economy back to normal is going to be hard.
Just finally, Mayor, the president has decided to spend some of his Twitter time attacking you.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen to everybody. It could be, a special moment. It could be an irritant. But how do you deal with it?
I have a rule, Steve. I've been in politics long enough is I never let anybody get away with saying something that's not true about me or about our city. And you never want to be in a fight with somebody who's, I'm trying not to use harsh language, but you don't want to get in a fight with a fool, because sometimes people won't be able to tell the two of you apart. It's an old saying and it's very true. But at the same time, you have to defend yourself. And you have to defend your town. And that's what we've done. The thing I noticed about this president, and like most bullies, if you punch back hard, they back down. And I think this guy.
Well, Mayor Muriel Bowser, thank you so much for your time and insights and for your leadership during a very stressful time for the city. I live here and very happy with the things you have contributed to us. So thank you so much. Good to be with you.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you for joining me today. I'm Steve Clemons. We'll see you tomorrow. Be well.